First contact, final stand. The vast emptiness of space erupted in brilliant flashes as the Void Dominion's obsidian ships tore through the Galactic Coalition's defensive line. Their weapons, tendrils of pure darkness that seemed to consume rather than destroy, sliced through advanced warships as if they were nothing more than paper. On the command bridge of the Coalition's last stronghold station, Helios Prime, Grand Admiral Tiberius watched the battle with a grim expression. His normally vibrant turquoise scales had faded to a dull gray over the 3 years of relentless war against an enemy they could not understand. "Another system lost," reported his second-in-command, strategist Veridian, her crystalline form reflecting the emergency lights pulsing throughout the station. "That makes 17 in the past month alone." Tiberius didn't respond immediately. Around the circular command table stood representatives from 9 different species, all that remained of the once proud coalition of 32 worlds. Some had joined thousands of years ago when interstellar travel was first discovered. Others were relative newcomers, having achieved space flight only centuries earlier. All were facing extinction. "Our predictive algorithms have failed again," stated Logic Unit 7, the machine intelligence representative. "The Void Dominion continues to adapt to our strategies 27.3% faster than we can implement them." "They anticipate our every move," hissed Xanthos, the arthropoid strategist, mandibles clicking in frustration. "It's as if they're reading our tactical manuals before we even write them." Tiberius finally straightened his posture and gazed at the holographic display showing the inexorable advance of the Void Dominion across Coalition space. "We've tried everything in our collective knowledge: advanced gravitational weapons, temporal distortion fields, even the forbidden quantum cascade protocols. Nothing works against them for long." The room fell silent. 3 years of fighting had depleted their resources, their ships, and worst of all, their hope. The Void Dominion had appeared without warning, without communication, without mercy. They simply began consuming worlds, transforming entire planets into more of their terrible ships. "There is one option we haven't considered," came a quiet voice from the far side of the table. All eyes turned to Science Director Lumina, the only Solari present. Her species, with their ethereal light-based bodies, rarely participated in military discussions. "Speak, Director," Tiberius prompted. Lumina's form brightened slightly as she interfaced with the station systems. A new star system appeared in the display, a yellow star with 8 planets, the third a vibrant blue-green marble. "I propose we contact the humans." The reaction was immediate. Laughter, scoffs, and outright dismissal erupted around the table. "The humans?" Xanthos's mandibles clacked in what passed for laughter among his kind. "They've barely had space flight for 2 centuries. They haven't even colonized their own system properly." "Their technology is primitive," added Logic Unit 7. "They still use combustion engines for some of their vehicles." Tiberius raised a hand for silence. "While I appreciate creative thinking, Director Lumina, the humans are not even full members of the Coalition. They're still under observation status." "That's precisely why we should ask for their help," Lumina insisted, her luminous form pulsing with conviction. "The Void Dominion predicts our tactics because we all evolved with similar thought patterns despite our physical differences. But humans—" She manipulated the display to show historical records from Earth. "Humans think differently." Images flashed across the display. Humans fighting wars against each other with tactics that made no logical sense, employing strategies that by all reasonable analysis should have failed, yet somehow succeeded. Humans putting themselves at risk to save others with no genetic relation. Humans creating art and music that served no evolutionary purpose. Humans exploring simply for the sake of exploration. "Their minds work in ways none of our species do," Lumina continued. "They're illogical, emotional, unpredictable, and that might be exactly what we need." Admiral Tiberius studied the images thoughtfully. What could they possibly offer against an enemy that has defeated the combined might of the Coalition? "They have a new ship," Lumina replied. "The Earth Defense Force has been developing a prototype vessel using principles even our scientists find unorthodox. It's called the Defiance. When the Defiance emerged from Earth's orbital shipyard, Captain Nikolai Volkov couldn't help but feel a surge of pride mixed with trepidation. The ship represented humanity's greatest technological achievement, a blend of coalition-shared knowledge and uniquely human innovation. At 45, Nikolai had spent his entire adult life in the Earth Defense Force. He'd worked his way up from shuttle pilot to captain of humanity's most advanced vessel. His weather-beaten face and the streak of white in his otherwise dark hair spoke of years of hard service during Earth's tumultuous unification wars. "System check complete, Captain," reported his XO, Commander Juno Reeves. "All experimental systems are online and functioning within parameters." Nikolai nodded, his steel-gray eyes scanning the bridge. Unlike the sterile, minimalist design of coalition vessels, the Defiance's bridge hummed with life. Holographic displays floated beside old-fashioned physical controls. Plants grew along the walls, part of the experimental biosphere that helped manage the ship's atmosphere. The crew of 200 represented Earth's diversity, all backgrounds and specialties. "Status of the entropy core?" he asked. Lieutenant Darius Jackson, the ship's chief engineer, consulted his display. "Operating at 87% efficiency, Captain. The quantum fluctuations are within acceptable parameters, though I still think the whole concept is insane." Nikolai permitted himself a small smile. "Insanity might be exactly what we need, Lieutenant." The communication officer, Ensign Olivia Cheng, suddenly straightened in her seat. "Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Coalition High Command. It's addressed specifically to the Defiance." Nikolai raised an eyebrow. The Coalition rarely communicated directly with Earth, preferring to work through the observation team stationed in lunar orbit. "On screen, Ensign." The face that appeared on the main display belonged to a species Nikolai had never seen before, a being seemingly made of light itself. "Captain Volkov of the Earth vessel Defiance," the being said, its voice melodious despite the grave tone. "I am Science Director Lumina of the Coalition. We face an unprecedented crisis, and we request your immediate assistance." Nikolai listened intently as Lumina explained the threat of the Void Dominion and the Coalition's desperate situation. With each word, the bridge crew's expressions grew more serious. "You want us to fight an enemy that 32 advanced civilizations couldn't defeat?" Commander Reeves asked incredulously when Lumina finished. "With one ship." "Not just any ship," Lumina replied. "Your ship specifically. The Defiance employs principles that no coalition species would ever consider viable, yet somehow you've made them work. The entropy core, the adaptive hull, the biological components integrated with technology. These concepts are anathema to our logical thinking, but they might be the very things the Void Dominion cannot predict." Nikolai leaned forward. "Director Lumina, while I'm flattered you think we might succeed where you failed, this sounds like a suicide mission." "It likely is," Lumina admitted. "But you are quite literally our last hope. The Void Dominion will reach your solar system within a year regardless. You can wait and face them alone, or help us now and perhaps discover a weakness we've been unable to find." Nikolai exchanged glances with his senior officers. He saw fear in their eyes, but also determination, that uniquely human trait that had driven their species to climb mountains simply because they existed and venture into space, despite all the dangers. "Transmit all the tactical data you have on these Void Dominion ships," Nikolai said after a moment. "We'll need to know exactly what we're facing." "Then you'll help us?" Lumina's form brightened noticeably. Nikolai's expression hardened. "We'll try, no promises. But if these Void Dominion ships are coming for Earth anyway, I'd rather face them on our terms than theirs." "Thank you, Captain Volkov," Lumina said, genuine relief in her voice. "Coordinates for Helios Prime are being transmitted. Our remaining fleet will escort you to the front lines once you arrive." When the transmission ended, the bridge remained silent for several seconds. "Well," Nikolai said finally, "looks like we're going to war. All stations prepare for immediate departure. Commander Reeves, review the Coalition data as soon as it arrives and develop preliminary tactical options." Lieutenant Jackson, I want the entropy core at 100% efficiency, whatever it takes. Captain, Reeves said quietly, you realize we might not come back from this. Nikolai looked at the image of Earth displayed on one of the secondary screens. The blue-green world that had given birth to humanity with all its contradictions, flaws, and remarkable potential. If we don't do this, Commander, there might not be anything to come back to. He straightened in his chair. Helm, set course for Helios Prime. Let's show the Coalition what humans can do. The Coalition representatives weren't impressed when the Defiance arrived at Helios Prime. Compared to their massive dreadnoughts, the human vessel looked small, almost fragile. Its hull a patchwork of materials and designs that seemed haphazard to their eyes. This is the weapon that will save us? Admiral Tiberius couldn't keep the skepticism from his voice as he met with Captain Volkov in Helios Prime's central chamber. It barely has enough armament to qualify as a warship by our standards. Nikolai, standing tall despite being dwarfed by most of the alien representatives, smiled thinly. With respect, Admiral, conventional armaments haven't worked against the Void Dominion. We're offering something different. And what exactly is that? Demanded Xanthos. Unpredictability, Nikolai replied simply. Your species all evolved with certain shared logical foundations. Even your AIs are built on those same principles. But humans, he shrugged. We're messy, contradictory. We make decisions based on limited information, gut feelings, and sometimes just because we feel like it. The Void Dominion has learned to predict logical species. Let's see how they handle an illogical one. Before the Coalition representatives could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. Void Dominion fleet detected, announced a voice over the comm system. Multiple signatures approaching from Sector 7. Perfect timing, Nikolai said grimly. Time to test our theory. Admiral, with your permission, the Defiance will engage the enemy. Tiberius hesitated for only a moment. Permission granted, Captain Volkov. May whatever deities you believe in watch over you. Nikolai's lips quirked in a half-smile. We don't rely on deities, Admiral. We make our own luck. As he rushed back to his ship, Nikolai knew they were about to face an enemy unlike any humanity had encountered before. But in that moment, he felt something he hadn't expected, a fierce, almost primal excitement. This was why humans explored the stars, why they pushed boundaries, why they never stopped reaching for the impossible. The Void Dominion was about to encounter the human factor, and win or lose, nothing would ever be the same again. Chaos Protocol. The Void Dominion's formation was perfect, a geometric pattern that shifted and flowed with mathematical precision as their obsidian ships advanced toward Helios Prime. The Coalition fleet moved to intercept, their own formations based on thousands of years of tactical evolution and optimization. But the Defiance did not join their neat battle lines. All stations prepare for Chaos Protocol Alpha, Captain Nikolai Volkov ordered, his voice steady despite the tension evident in every line of his body. Activate the adaptive hull and bring the entropy core to full power. The ship shuddered as its revolutionary systems engaged. Along its exterior, the seemingly random patchwork of materials began to shift and change, panels rotating and reconfiguring in patterns no engineer would consider logical. Coalition Command is ordering us to fall into position at grid coordinates 227 Mark V, reported Ensign Chang. Acknowledge their order, Nikolai replied. Then disregard it. Helm, take us on attack vector Charlie 9. Lieutenant Wei Lin, the helm officer, couldn't suppress a grin as she executed the command. The Defiance surged forward, not toward the Void Dominion Fleet Center as Coalition doctrine would demand, but at an oblique angle that seemed to be aiming for empty space. On Helios Prime, Admiral Tiberius watched in confusion. What are they doing? They're not even targeting the enemy formation. Science Director Lumina's luminous form brightened slightly. They're implementing their strategy. Watch. The Void Dominion, confronted with a ship moving in a pattern their predictive algorithms couldn't categorize, hesitated. Their perfect formation wavered slightly. Now, Nikolai ordered, deploy the chaff drones and activate spectral camouflage. From the Defiance erupted dozens of small, unmanned vessels, each broadcasting conflicting sensor signatures simultaneously. The ship's experimental cloaking system engaged, not by making the vessel invisible, but by making it appear to be in multiple locations at once. "The Void Dominion is adjusting their formation, Captain," Commander Reeves monitored the tactical display. "They're trying to compensate." Nikolai nodded. "Good, that means they can't predict us. Weapons, target the lead ship with the entropy cannon." "Entropy cannon charged and locked," confirmed Lieutenant Viktor Petrov, his Russian accent thickening with excitement. "Firing in 3, 2, 1. A beam of swirling, chaotic energy erupted from the Defiance, slicing through space toward the Void Dominion's lead vessel. Unlike conventional weapons that the enemy had easily defended against, the entropy cannon didn't deliver energy in a predictable pattern. Instead, it fluctuated randomly, making it impossible to establish a consistent defense. The beam struck the Void Dominion ship, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then areas of the obsidian hull began to destabilize, molecular bonds breaking down in unpredictable ways. Pieces of the ship simply dissolved into space. "Direct hit," Petrov shouted. "Target is sustaining significant damage." On the main display, the Coalition fleet commanders watched in stunned silence as a human weapon accomplished what their most advanced technology had failed to do: hurt the Void Dominion. The remaining enemy ships immediately altered their formation, clustering around the damaged vessel in a defensive pattern. "They're protecting it," Nikolai observed. "That's interesting. Lieutenant Jackson, what's the status of the entropy core?" "Operating at 94% efficiency, Captain," Darius replied from engineering. "But we can't maintain this level for more than 15 minutes without risking an overload." Nikolai's eyes narrowed. "We won't need 15 minutes. Helm, bring us around for another pass, different angle, different speed. I want nothing about this attack to resemble the last one." As the Defiance maneuvered for a second strike, the Void Dominion launched their response, tendrils of darkness that reached through space like hungry serpents. "Evasive maneuvers," Nikolai ordered. Lieutenant Lin's hands flew across the controls, the ship pivoting and rolling in ways that defied conventional space combat doctrine. Where Coalition ships would have executed precise, calculated evasion patterns, the Defiance moved erratically, almost drunkenly. Most of the dark tendrils missed, but one clipped the ship's starboard side. Alarms blared across the bridge. "Hull breach on Deck 3, reported Commander Reeves. "Emergency containment field holding, but we've lost 2 of the adaptive panels." Nikolai gripped his command chair. "Casualties?" "None, Captain. Section was evacuated per Chaos Protocol." Nikolai nodded grimly. The Chaos Protocols, a series of battle plans that deliberately incorporated randomness and unpredictability, had been mocked by Coalition military advisors. Now they were keeping his crew alive. "Captain," Ensign Cheng called out, "we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Tiberius. The Coalition fleet is moving to support us." On the tactical display, Nikolai saw the massive Coalition vessels breaking their traditional formations, attempting to mimic the Defiance's erratic movements. "Tell them to maintain distance," he ordered. "We need to draw the Void Dominion's attention fully on us. Weapons, prepare for a wide-spectrum attack. I want every unconventional system we have firing simultaneously." The Defiance turned to face the Void Dominion fleet directly, its adaptive hull reconfiguring into what looked like a chaotic mess of spikes and concave surfaces. "All weapons systems ready, Captain," Petrov reported. Nikolai took a deep breath. "Fire everything." The human ship erupted with a dazzling array of weapons: the entropy cannon, quantum disruptors, gravimetric pulses, and even a cluster of modified nuclear warheads. Each weapon operated on different principles, each followed different trajectories, and each would impact at slightly different times. The Void Dominion attempted to counter, their dark tendrils lashing out in all directions, but faced with so many different types of attacks arriving in an unpredictable sequence, their defenses faltered. 3 enemy ships shattered into fragments, 2 more suffered significant damage. The remainder began to retreat, their perfect formation now completely disrupted. Cheers erupted across the Defiance's bridge. Even on Helios Prime, the Coalition representatives watched in amazement as the Void Dominion, the unstoppable force that had decimated their civilizations, actually fled from a single human vessel. How, Admiral Tiberius whispered, all eyes wide with disbelief. How did they do it? Science Director Lumina's form pulsed with excitement. They think differently than we do, than the Void Dominion does. Where we see chaos as a problem to be solved, humans use it as a tool. For the next several weeks, the Defiance continued to engage Void Dominion forces across multiple systems, never using the same tactics twice. Sometimes they would charge directly into enemy formations, other times they would hide in asteroid fields or the coronas of stars, emerging to strike when least expected. They used planetary gravity wells to execute maneuvers that Coalition ship designers had never considered possible, and with each encounter, Nikolai and his crew learned more about their enemy. They're connected somehow, Nikolai explained during a strategy session with the Coalition leadership. They react too quickly to new threats for each ship to be making independent decisions. There must be a central intelligence coordinating them. We've suspected as much, Admiral Tiberius acknowledged, but we've never been able to locate it or disrupt the connection. That's because you've been looking for logical communication methods, Nikolai countered. Subspace transmissions, quantum entanglement, things you understand. But what if they're using something completely different? Dr. Imani Okafor, the Defiance's chief science officer, stepped forward with a holographic display. We've been analyzing the energy signatures emitted by the Void Dominion ships during combat. There's a pattern in the background radiation they generate, subtle variations that our systems initially filtered out as noise. She manipulated the display, revealing a complex waveform that pulsed and shifted. We believe this is their communication method, not information transmitted as discrete packages, but as continuous modulations in the fabric of space-time itself. The Coalition scientists exchanged glances of surprise and disbelief. That would require energy levels beyond anything we can generate, one of them protested. Dr. Okafor shrugged. Maybe for your technology, but we've identified a potential vulnerability. If we can generate a counterwave, a form of destructive interference, we might be able to disrupt their connection temporarily. And if we do, Nikolai added, we believe they'll be unable to coordinate their actions. But to implement this strategy, we need to find the source, the central intelligence that's directing them. Xanthos's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Our long-range scouts have reported unusual activity in the abyssal void, a massive concentration of Void Dominion ships protecting something at the center. Nikolai's eyes lit up. That's it. That's where we'll find their command center. Admiral Tiberius shook his head. Captain Volkov, I appreciate what your vessel has accomplished, but even the Defiance cannot take on the main Void Dominion fleet. It would be suicide. Not if we have help, Nikolai replied with a smile. Your ships may not be able to match our unpredictability, but they still have power. We don't need to defeat their entire fleet, just create enough chaos to get the Defiance close to their command center. Over the next 3 days, a daring plan took shape. The Coalition would commit its remaining forces to a massive frontal assault on the Void Dominion concentration in the abyssal void. While the enemy was distracted, the Defiance, enhanced with additional stealth technology, would slip through their defenses and deploy Dr. Okafor's counterwave device directly at the command center. As the final preparations were made, Commander Reeves found Nikolai alone in his quarters, studying holographic projections of the upcoming battle. The odds are still against us, sir, she said quietly. Nikolai nodded. They always have been, but there's something you learn in human military history, Juno. Sometimes the craziest plans are the ones that work. The enemy expects logic, calculation, reason. We're going to give them humanity in all its chaotic glory. The day of the assault arrived with a tense atmosphere throughout both the Coalition fleet and aboard the Defiance. As the ships prepared to enter hyperspace, Admiral Tiberius transmitted a final message. Captain Volkov, on behalf of the Coalition, I wish to express our gratitude. Whatever happens today, know that you have already achieved what we thought impossible. You've given us hope. Nikolai smiled. Save the speeches for after we win, Admiral. Defiance out. The journey to the abyssal void took 6 hours. When they arrived, the sight that greeted them was more terrifying than even the most pessimistic projections. Thousands of Void Dominion ships formed a sphere around what appeared to be a massive construct, a structure of impossible geometries that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. That's it, Dr. Okafor confirmed. That's their command center. Coalition fleet is in position, reported Ensign Cheng. They're awaiting our signal to begin the assault. Nikolai took a deep breath, looking around at his crew, humans who had volunteered for what might well be a one-way mission. Activate the enhanced stealth systems. Prepare the counterwave device. Signal the Coalition fleet. Operation Chaos begins now. The Coalition ships surged forward, weapons blazing in a desperate frontal assault. The Void Dominion responded immediately, their perfect formations flowing outward to engage. In the confusion, the Defiance slipped between enemy vessels, its experimental stealth systems making it appear as nothing more than background radiation to the Void Dominion's sensors. We're approaching optimal deployment range, Dr. Okafor announced as they neared the central construct. Counterwave device charged and ready. Suddenly, alarms blared. We've been detected, Lieutenant Lin cried. Multiple Void Dominion ships breaking off to intercept. Evasive maneuvers, Nikolai ordered. Lieutenant Petrov, target those interceptors with everything we have. We need to buy Dr. Okafor time to deploy the device. The Defiance twisted and turned, weapons firing in seemingly random patterns as Void Dominion ships closed in from all sides. Dark tendrils lashed out, some finding their mark. The ship shuddered under multiple impacts. Hull integrity at 62%. Commander Reeves reported grimly. We can't take much more of this. We're in position, Dr. Okafor called out, deploying counterwave device now. From the Defiance launched a small probe that accelerated toward the central construct. The Void Dominion ships redoubled their efforts to stop it, but it was too small, too fast, too unpredictable in its trajectory. The probe impacted the construct, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then a pulse of energy unlike anything they had ever seen before expanded outward from the point of impact, not a destructive wave, but a pattern of interference that rippled through space-time itself. The effect on the Void Dominion was immediate and dramatic. Their ships, previously moving with perfect coordination, suddenly began to drift aimlessly. Some collided with each other, others fired weapons in random directions. It's working, Lieutenant Jackson exclaimed. We've disrupted their connection. Now for Phase 2, Nikolai said grimly. Target the command construct with all remaining entropy weapons. Fire when ready. The Defiance's weapons lashed out one final time, striking the now vulnerable central construct. Cracks appeared in its impossible geometry, spreading rapidly as the entropy effect took hold. Then, with a silent flash that seemed to temporarily distort the very fabric of space around it, the construct collapsed in on itself. A shockwave of dark energy radiated outward, washing over the Defiance and the remaining Coalition ships. For a terrible moment, all systems went dead, and then, gradually, power returned. Status report, Nikolai demanded, pulling himself back into his command chair after being thrown to the deck. Entropy core offline, Lieutenant Jackson reported. Hull integrity at 41%, life support functioning on auxiliary power. And the Void Dominion? Nikolai asked. Commander Reeves studied the tactical display in amazement. They're shutting down, sir, all of them. Without the central command structure, they appear to be going dormant. Throughout the battle zone, the once terrifying Void Dominion ships drifted lifelessly in space, their dark energy weapons silent, their perfect formations dissolved into random clusters. Coalition Command is hailing us, Ensign Cheng announced. Admiral Tiberius wishes to speak with you. The Admiral's scaled face appeared on the main screen, his expression one of disbelief mixed with jubilation. Captain Volkov, you did it. You actually did it. Nikolai, bloodied from a cut on his forehead but smiling, shrugged. Just a little human chaos, Admiral. Sometimes that's all you need. In the days that followed, as Coalition scientists studied the now-dormant Void Dominion ships, they made remarkable discoveries. The ships themselves were not weapons but vessels, containing the preserved consciousness of a species that had evolved in a universe where the laws of physics were fundamentally different from our own. They had invaded our reality not out of malice, but out of desperate need as their own universe collapsed. The Coalition Grand Council convened an emergency session to decide what to do with this knowledge. Many advocated for the immediate destruction of all Void Dominion vessels, but it was Captain Nikolai Volkov who proposed a different approach. They came here because they were dying, he told the assembled representatives. They fought because they didn't know how to communicate with us and we didn't understand them. Now we have a chance to do better. In the end, the Council agreed to establish a research initiative aimed at finding a way to communicate with the dormant consciousness within the Void Dominion ships, perhaps even to create a stable habitat where they could exist without threatening other species. And as for the Defiance and her crew, they returned to Earth as heroes, not just of humanity, but of the entire Coalition. Their journey marked the beginning of a new era, one in which humans would no longer be seen as primitive newcomers to galactic society, but as valuable allies whose very unpredictability might be their greatest strength. For in a universe of perfect order and logic, sometimes a little chaos is exactly what's needed to change the impossible into the possible.